It starts with a boy. A king, really. He was the biggest thing on the planet. Nothing else came close. Before him, popular music was safe, it was polite. The crooners sang about moons and Junes. Parents understood it. It was their music, just sung by younger people. And then he showed up. He moved in a way people had never seen. It was electric. It was dangerous. He sang with a voice that was one part gospel, one part country, one part blues. It was a sound nobody had ever mixed together before. And it scared people. It scared the establishment. It scared parents. But the kids, they loved him. They screamed for him. They fainted for him. He was theirs. He was the sound of their rebellion. He was the symbol of a new America, a new way of being young. Every record he released went to #1. Every movie he made was a blockbuster. He was a force of nature, unstoppable. And then, at the absolute peak of his fame, he got a letter. It was from the United States government. It was a draft notice. The king had to become a Private Presley. The world was shocked. How could they take him away? He was more than a singer. He was a cultural phenomenon. Some thought it was a plot. The old guard, the ones who hated his swiveling hips and his sneer, they finally had a way to get him. Cut his hair, put him in a uniform, send him away. They hoped the world would forget him in 2 years. They hoped the fire would go out. His manager saw it differently. He saw a public relations masterpiece. The ultimate rebel was going to serve his country. He wasn't going to ask for special treatment. He was going to be a regular soldier, a G.I. Joe. It would make him an even bigger hero. It would make him palatable to the parents who feared him. It would make him an American icon, not just a teen idol. So he went. He got his hair cut. The famous sideburns were gone. He put on the uniform. He learned to march and salute. And he was sent overseas, not to a war zone. The Korean War was over, and Vietnam hadn't really started yet. He was sent to Germany, Friedberg, Germany. He was part of the American occupying force, a peacekeeping mission. This is where the story gets complicated. This is where the song comes in. Think about Germany in 1958. It was only 13 years after the end of World War II. 13 years, that's nothing. For Americans of a certain age, the ones who had fought or who had lost brothers and fathers and sons, Germany was still the enemy. The war wasn't a chapter in a history book. It was a fresh wound. It was a living memory. The images of the war were still burned into the national consciousness. The sound of German words for many was still the sound of the aggressor. The country was split in two, East and West. The Cold War was in full swing, as American soldiers were stationed there as a buffer against the Soviet Union. So here's this American symbol, Elvis, living in this strange, complicated place. He was living off base in a town called Bad Nauheim. He was trying to be a good soldier. He did his duties, but he was still Elvis. He was still a star. He was surrounded by his friends, his entourage. And he was still making plans for his career. His movie contract was still active. While he was in Germany, he was preparing for his next film. It was a movie about a soldier, a GI in Germany. It was called GI Blues, Art Imitating Life. The movie needed songs, a soundtrack. The story called for a scene where the soldier, played by Elvis, has to sing a song to a puppet. It's a charming, light-hearted moment. He's in a German town, performing for German children. So the songwriters and producers wanted a song that felt authentic to the setting. Something with a German flavor. They didn't have to look far. There was an old German folk song, a very famous one. It's a traditional song from the Swabia region, a song of farewell. A soldier or a traveler asking his love if he must leave, muss I denn zum Stadtteil hinaus? Must I then leave this little town? It was a perfect fit. It was a real German song. It had a simple, catchy melody. It was sweet and sentimental. It sounded a bit like a nursery rhyme. The kind of thing you would sing to a puppet, so they took it. They wrote new English lyrics around the original German chorus. The English lyrics were simple. A boy is talking to a girl. He tells her not to be sad while he's away. He promises to be true. He says his heart isn't made of wood. Treat me nice. Treat me good. Treat me like you really should, because I'm not made of wood, and I don't have a wooden heart. It's a children's song. The melody is a simple oompa-pa polka beat. It's played on an accordion. It's almost comically innocent. And then, in the middle of this simple love pledge, he switches languages. He sings the original German words, muss I denn zum Stadtteil hinaus und du mein Schatz bleibst hier. The delivery is earnest. His German isn't perfect, but he sings it with feeling. It's a moment of cultural crossover, an American pop star singing a German folk tune in a movie about an American soldier stationed in Germany. On paper, it's all very charming. It's a gesture of goodwill. It's a little piece of musical diplomacy. The recording was done. The movie was made. It was released after he returned home from the army. GI Blues was a massive success. and the song was a standout. In Europe, it was a monster hit. It went to #1 in the United Kingdom and stayed there for weeks. It was a hit all across the continent. People loved it. They loved the mix of English and German. They loved the happy, bouncy tune. It was the sound of the new friendly American presence. It was a song of peace, not war. But in America, something strange happened. His record label, RCA, was hesitant. They didn't release the song as the main single from the album. They chose other tracks, they seemed nervous about it, and they were right to be. Because when the song started to get some airplay, the backlash began. It wasn't a universal outcry, or it wasn't a massive protest, but it was a vocal and angry minority, and their anger was real. The controversy was not about the music, it was not about the lyrics, it was about the language. It was about the sound of German words coming out of the mouth of Elvis Presley. For a segment of the American public, this was a betrayal. It was deeply offensive. Their memories of the war were too raw. They had been taught to see Germany as the enemy. The German language was the language of propaganda, of military commands, of hate. And now, their hero, the all-American boy who had just served his country, was singing in that language. He was singing it in a happy poppy song. It felt like he was trivializing their sacrifice. It felt like he was forgetting what had happened. Letters were written to radio stations. People called in to complain. How dare he? How dare they play this? Don't they remember Pearl Harbor? Don't they remember D-Day? The logic wasn't rational, it was emotional. Music is emotion. And this song had a nerve, a deep, painful nerve that hadn't healed yet. It was a reminder that the war wasn't over for everyone. The fighting had stopped, but the feelings remained. The hate, the fear, the grief. It was all still there, just below the surface. The protest wasn't just coming from the older generation, the ones who had fought. It also came from a place of cultural protectionism. Rock and roll was an American invention. It was our thing. It was our cultural export to the world. And Elvis was its king. He was the symbol of American youth, American cool, American dominance. For him to sing in a foreign language, especially German, felt like a watering down of that symbol. It felt un-American. Why was he singing their songs? Shouldn't they be singing ours? It touched on a deep-seated insecurity, a fear of losing a cultural identity that was still so new and so powerful. And there was another layer to it. For some of his original fans, the ones who loved the dangerous, rebellious Elvis of the 1950s, this song was proof that he had sold out. The army had changed him. The establishment had won. The old Elvis would never have sung a cheesy folk song with an accordion. The old Elvis sang about hound dogs and jailhouse rock. This new Elvis, this movie star Elvis, was sanitized. He was safe. He was singing a children's song from Germany. It was the ultimate proof that the rebel was gone, replaced by a clean-cut, family-friendly entertainer. The controversy over the German lyrics was mixed up with a general disappointment in his new direction. The language was just the easiest thing to latch onto. It was the most obvious symbol of this change. So this simple, innocent song became a lightning rod. It became a vessel for all sorts of anxieties. Post-war trauma, cultural pride, fear of change, disappointment in a hero's evolution. A song designed to be a charming moment in a lighthearted movie became a controversial statement. He wasn't trying to make a statement. The songwriters weren't. The movie studio wasn't. They were just trying to make a hit record and a successful film. They stumbled into a cultural minefield without even realizing it. They thought they were building a small bridge between two cultures. But for some people, it was a bridge too soon. The foundations were still too shaky. The song's fate in America is a strange footnote. Because of the controversy, RCA never pushed it as a primary single for Elvis. Another singer, a man named Joe Dowell, saw an opportunity. He recorded a cover version of the song. His version went to #1 on the Billboard charts. The public was clearly divided. Many people were not offended. They liked the song. But the fear of offending the vocal minority was enough to make the original record label back off. Eventually, Elvis's version became a classic. It got played on the radio. It became one of his well-known songs. But it had to take the long way around. It had to wait for the controversy to die down. It had to wait for time to do its work to soften the hard edges of memory. Looking back, it all seems so strange. A controversy over a children's song. But it shows how much power we invest in our symbols. Elvis was a symbol. The German language was a symbol. And when those two symbols collided, they created an unexpected explosion. It was a small explosion, but it was a real one. It revealed the cracks in the post-war consensus. It showed that unity and forgiveness were not as simple as signing a treaty. It takes generations. It takes time. The story of this song is the story of an accidental controversy. It's the story of how context is everything. The same notes, the same words, can mean completely different things to different people in different places at different times. In Germany, it was a familiar folk song, given a fun, modern twist by a beloved American star. It was a sign of acceptance. In England, it was a catchy, exotic hit record. A novelty. In America, it was a painful reminder, a perceived betrayal, a sign that their hero had changed. It's a perfect example of how an artist, even one as big as Elvis, doesn't get to control the meaning of their art. Once it's out in the world decides what it means. The listener brings their own history, their own biases, their own pain to the experience. And that is what happened here. A song written to charm children and sell movie tickets ended up telling a much bigger story. A story about war and memory and the difficult, messy business of moving on. It all started with an old folk tune. A song about a boy leaving his town and his sweetheart. A song about a simple, universal feeling. But by passing through the voice of the most famous man in the world, at a very specific moment in history, it became something else entirely. It became a statement, it became a conflict, all because he sang a few lines in German. All because he told his girl he didn't have a wooden heart.